So one of the added benefits of Rory Vaden's book was that he offers action points and questions at the end that are provocative, that are sort of like soul-seeking questions that require you to dig deep, but they help you integrate and titrate all that he has presented in the book. So I'm going to delve into a couple of questions and we can offer our thoughts and reflections. What is procrastination costing you in your life? What are the various ways that it costs you something? I'm going to start with you, Edwin, to share some thoughts around these two questions.
Yeah, that's a great question. So procrastination in general is, you should be doing something and you're not doing it. And that something can be anything. It could be going to school. It could be continuing your education. It could be looking for a new job. It could be trying to learn something new. Procrastination essentially is, there's something that we should be doing and we're not doing it. And it could cost you a lot in your life. It's cost me in my life where I could have been further along or further ahead if I would have taken action. And because I didn't take action, I'm not exactly where I want to be or where I intended to be at a particular point in time in my life or in my journey. So procrastination costs you all the opportunity that you missed because you weren't doing anything. When conditions were right, or you had an opportunity to actually take a leap or take a step in order to accomplish something, you just didn't do it. You didn't step up. You didn't, and that can be anything. It could be from work, it could be from school, it could be relationships where you've got an opportunity to, say hello to a pretty guy or a girl, and you just don't do it, and someone else takes the opportunity. So procrastination is essentially, in my mind, a squandered chance at life. And at the end of it, or when you're later in years, you don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have done this. Much better to just do it, and at least you went for it, and worry about the rejection or any of the negative consequences later. I'd rather take the action, do it, than to not do it at all. Simon, curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think recently it has less of an issue for me. Maybe throughout the years I kind of adjusted how I think, how I work. But here's a story that I recall. So I did my my graduate degree in computer science. Typically, it is a 2-year program for masters, and then towards the end of the 2 years, I have to do a thesis. And around the same time, my supervisor decided to take on a different role elsewhere, so I don't see him, and there's a job opportunity that sort of popped up in my inbox. So I decided to apply, and I got the job. Right, that's my first real job, and so without a supervisor, and then I'm like making money. So obviously my master's degree sort of put on hold, right? And I procrastinated in finishing that up, right? And it kind of kept on going. I just didn't really care about it at all, right? Nobody cared about me. I don't care about my program. Fortunately, I think there's a good ending to this, or a happy ending to this, is that I met my girlfriend, which is my wife now, and she kind of encouraged me, right, and say, hey, you should at least kind of finish that up, right? You already spent so much time and money on that, and so I finally finished it after five years instead of a normal 2-year program, right? And so it could be easily forgotten, because all the other stuff that kind of came into my life. So of course, if I would, have a chance to go back, I would like not procrastinate and just get it over with within 2 years or so, right? It's just, I have to still pay every single year, even though I'm not doing anything, right? And waiting, spending all this time, have to go back to it, have to redo some of the work, right? So it's definitely the advice, I guess, to my younger self is that, hey, just sometimes it's just better just do it and get it over with rather than dragging on. So that's a story that kind of come to my my mind.
And what I'm hearing from the both of you is that there's this cost to procrastination. There are times when I think, if we procrastinate or put things off, we're actually standing still. And that sort of, there's a neutralness to procrastination where, there isn't a positive or a negative. We're just sort of in liminal space when there's a natural cost. And I think Rory Vaden's book really brought into focus of what that cost is. That there's like this, he talks about the rent axiom, that rent is due every day. And that, the more we procrastinate, that we're actually compounding interest. So the tasks that we put off till tomorrow end up to be put off yet again because there's guilt around that too. And I know that it's facing into the things I just don't want to do that tend to be put off. And it's not just putting it off. There's a cost to putting it off. It's not just as simple as, oh, it just stays in this neutral zone. It compounds interest. It becomes more difficult the longer I put it off. And plus there's now an emotion attached to it. There's guilt attached to it. And so it just starts to weigh heavier and heavier. So it could be a small task in a day-to-day that I put off that gets that compounded interest put onto it. And secondly, also with procrastination, is that lost opportunity. Rory Vaden talks about the law of diminishing return. I think it's the law of diminishing return. When the longer you're inactive and you don't commit to a goal or an objective, the more you're inclined to not engage with it at all. That, that interest starts to wane, that your priorities start to shift away from that which you really seek. So I don't know, I'm guessing that since neither of you were little girls, that we used to skip in the schoolyard and we used to do double dutch. And there was always those moments of hesitation of when to enter into that skipping what looked like a mess. And the longer I waited, the more fear sort of and it sunk in, and the more I started to lack confidence about even being able to skip, that the longer I waited, the more I procrastinated, the less likely I was to actually enter into the double dutch skipping versus just doing it, just, having that momentum at the very beginning, not to question, not to think, not to fear, not to try to figure out if I can do it or not, but just to do it, was when I was the most successful and I was able to skip.